And let me tell you something. When she takes her oath of office, as she will this January, our allies will cheer, our enemies will fear, and we will have a commander-in-chief that we can trust.
A similar case made to perhaps a slightly different audience shortly thereafter. Here's former Congressman Adam Kinzinger, a veteran, former Republican congressman, a member of the January 6th Select Committee, speaking directly to his fellow Republicans.
How can a party claim to be patriotic if it idolizes a man who tried to overthrow a free and fair election? How can a party claim to stand for liberty if it sees a fight for freedom in Ukraine, an attack pitting tyranny against democracy, a challenge to everything our nation claims to be, and it retreats, it equivocates, it nominates a man who is weirdly obsessed with Putin, and his running mate who said, quote, "I don't care what happens in Ukraine." Yeah, and he wants to be vice president.
And finally, no conversation about U.S. national security is ever complete without input from the men and women in the military, the men and women who wear uniforms. When he delivered his remarks, Arizona Congressman Ruben Gallego, formerly of the Marine Corps, stood on stage with fellow veterans to thunderous applause. As for the choice in front of voters this November, here's Congressman Gallego.
Represent the best of our country. We stand united as veterans, Democrats, and patriots to fight for everyone who serves. But politicians like Donald Trump, they don't stand with us. They call patriots like Senator McCain losers. John McCain was an American hero. Show some respect.
Show some respect. Wow. Having made the case that the United States' position of global leadership is on the line in November, Vice President Kamala Harris was very clear. This election is not only the most important in our lives, it's one of the most important in the life of our nation. It's also where we start today with some of our favorite experts and friends. Retired U.S. Marine Corps Lieutenant Colonel, the founder of Democratic Majority Action PAC, Amy McGrath, is back. Plus, former Deputy National Security Advisor under President Obama, Ben Rhodes, is here. And chief political columnist, the host of the podcast In Politic for Puck, MSNBC National Affairs analyst John Heilman is here. John Heilman, I looked at the program at the beginning of the night, and I wasn't sure where Leon Panetta and Ruben Gallego fit in. I've had the privilege of speaking to both of them. They're incredible. But once Kamala Harris got into the national security section, not just her credentials, but her indictment of Trump's, it all clicked into place. And I heard in Leon Panetta's remarks something that I'm sure we've all heard privately from the kind of men and women who don't want to politicize their former national security agencies, but this scathing indictment of Trump's lack of fitness. What did you think of that presentation last night?
Well, Nicolle, happy Friday, by the way. I thought that I've covered Leon Panetta basically my entire career in different administrations, and that he's not Oprah Winfrey, and he's not Bill Clinton, he's not Barack Obama, he's not Michelle Obama, he's not a high wattage star. I think that was by intent. I think there was a reason, a very good reason, why we didn't see Beyonce or Taylor Swift or anybody else last night. This was supposed to be a night, last night was going to focus on Kamala Harris alone. And Leon Panetta is the perfect surrogate for that, because he is someone who, though most Americans who don't live in the political world don't know, Leon Panetta is a guy who has served Republican administrations, he's served Democratic administrations, started his career in the Nixon administration, has served at the CIA, has served at the Pentagon, has served at the OMB, has served in the White House. He's someone who, in terms of understanding the interplay between the executive function and the military and the intelligence operations and the Hill, is maybe as well versed and as credible, as credible as anybody on earth, arguably more credible than anybody currently living. And so for me, I thought this is the kind of surrogate you want here, which is someone whose credibility is unimpeachable and someone who also is not going to be anyone who is going to steal any of the limelight that should be focused on the nominee tonight. And I thought he did a great job in terms of how he made the argument. I mean, on paper, it is the right argument to be making from a guy like Leon Panetta. And if you put it together with Adam Kinzinger, you have a very powerful 1-2 punch on the national security front, I think, for last night in terms of doing the work they want to get done for her.
Yeah, I mean, Amy, I thought this was, and I agree with all of John's analysis here, but I thought this was some of the best constructed arguments because they came at the millions of people viewing from home, from every place. They came from a veteran. They came from this long, trusted hand speaking almost in monotone, without hyperbole, without any flowery language, just his sort of testimony to Kamala Harris's superiority over the alternative in November. And then Adam Kinzinger was the one who kind of came in with the barn burner indictment of Donald Trump's lack of patriotism, lack of fitness, and affinity, weird affinity, he said, for Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, it was the perfect 1-2 punch because you had Leon Panetta that really made people who may not know Kamala Harris, who care about national security, who worry about, is this person ready to be commander-in-chief? You had somebody of his background and his experience vouching for her, saying, we need her behind that resolute desk. We need her as commander-in-chief. And at the same time, reminding voters how bad Donald Trump is. And Adam Kinzinger did a perfect job of, he wasn't talking to the Democrats who were in the United Center. He was talking to fellow Republicans. He was talking to independents, basically saying, look, the other party has lost its way. And how can you call yourself patriotic if you follow a man who would not agree to the very basic premise of what American democracy is all about, and that is the peaceful transfer of power. And I think he did that so effectively last night.
Ben Rose, let me show you a little bit of Adam Kinzinger's speech about the Democratic Party, speaking directly to Republicans.
I've learned something about the Democratic Party. And I want to let my fellow Republicans in on the secret. The Democrats are as patriotic as us. They love this country just as much as we do. And they are as eager to defend American values at home and abroad as we conservatives have ever been. I was relieved to discover that because I've learned something about my party too, something I couldn't ignore. The Republican Party is no longer conservative. It has switched its allegiance from the principles that gave it purpose to a man whose only purpose is himself.
Ben, I said in 2016, after Trump's acceptance speech to Lester Holt, the Republican Party died in this room. And it didn't really land. I felt it because I'd worked for Bush and McCain, and I knew how Trump was different. But to hear someone who was a Republican member of Congress say that the party doesn't exist anymore because it has abandoned its principles and its only purpose is to support Donald Trump, was such an impactful thing for me as an ex-Republican. And I'm sure that just had special resonance as not just someone who's comfortable with Harris, but someone who's there campaigning for Harris as the only choice on questions of national security.
Yeah, and he didn't look uncomfortable to be there, Nicolle. He looked like he was in the right place. You know, he looked like he was wearing a suit of clothes that fit him, you know. And look, I mean, in terms of the slowness from 2016, for some people to come around to that view, it's now been a decade almost of Donald Trump dominating this party. So you can no longer say to yourself, well, Trump's an aberration, or, well, if Trump gets in there, maybe he'll hire people that are familiar to me as Republicans. Like, no, we're now through the third election cycle in which this has become increasingly about the interests of one man. And the couple of ways that I think it was particularly effective that dovetail with the Kamala Harris speech are, number one, the Democrats, from the first night of that convention through to the very end, were very assertive about American patriotism. I mean, there was a through line in all those speeches, from the symbolism to the rhetoric to who was on stage, about a big, inclusive American patriotism. And that was, I think, an intentional effort to say, this is our flag. Freedom is our word. Like, we stand for the things that should unite Americans, not just Democrats themselves. So Kinzinger kind of validating that from the outside, I think, makes that feel more credible. And at the same time, the critique from Kamala Harris of Donald Trump on both national security and on other issues in politics was that he's only in it for himself. You know, he's got one client, it's himself. He likes these autocrats because he wants to be one, right? And I think that ties it together too, because Trump's not in it for the country. Trump runs down the country. He attacks war heroes like John McCain. He wants to politicize the military to serve his own interests. So it all kind of ties together, Nicolle, into one message, which is what you hope for at these conventions, which is the Democratic Party is a big, inclusive, patriotic party that stands for American values. And the Republican Party has become the vehicle for one man's personal interests and ambitions. And that message, you know, it lands because it's true. You know, the best, and you've been in communications, Nicolle, the easiest messages to land are the ones that are obvious before people's eyes. And everybody from Adam Kinzinger to Ruben Gallego to obviously Kamala Harris could tie that all together.
Let me show you something pointed, John Heilman, that Congressman Pat Ryan said about suckers and losers, which is, for me, and Trump repeated an insult on veterans pretty recently. So this came up last night. Let me play this.
At West Point, you learn the honor code. A cadet will not lie, cheat, steal, or tolerate those who do. Well, there's a candidate who has violated every word in that code. A serial liar, cheater, thief, who looked soldiers in the eye, then turned around and called fallen heroes suckers and losers, who insulted Medal of Honor recipients just last week. I tell you what I think of Donald Trump. They told me I can't say that word on TV. I'm going to use an Army term, FUBAR. If you don't know FUBAR, Google it.
Heilman, that was pretty good convention writing.
Am I allowed to say what FUBAR means on the air?
It's Friday.
No,
you do what you think is right.
Well, just say F.
Right.
We can say